Welcome to Wandering Jews, a J-Square Adventures. Travel far enough and you meet yourself.
We're your hosts. I'm Scott.
And I'm Sorel. We all know that walking is great exercise. Popular wisdom tells us 10,000 steps a day should be our daily goal. However, hiking, not as a private hobby, but as a multi-generational pastime and as an exercise in nation building, is seen in few places around the world like it's seen in Israel. Throughout the year, across the country, you can see Israelis of all ages, school children, senior citizens, soldiers. You can see them walking the length and breadth of Israel. We have 81 national parks, 400 nature reserves. Israel's national park system covers approximately 20% of the country. In fact, the internationally renowned Israel Trail crisscrosses Israel from the Hermon to Eilat, from Jerusalem to the Mediterranean shore. It spans approximately 1,100 kilometers, that's 680 miles, and some 10,000 hikers travel the Israel National Trail a year and growing. Comparatively, the 3,540 kilometers Appalachian Trail sees between 3,000 to 4,000 hikers walking the entire length of the trail. From the beginning of the 20th century and until today, hiking, walking the land was and remains a ritual act rooting Israeli Jewish culture in the land itself, embodying Israelis in the landscapes and sites of the country. The poet Shaul Chernikovsky, one of the Hebrew giants of the Jewish cultural revival spurred by the Zionist movement, famously said, "A person is nothing other than a tiny country. A person is nothing more than the imprint of the scenes of their homeland." In Israel, walking is essentially an excursion into the imagined geography of homeland and memory.
Nothing like a good hike. In my own neighborhood outside of Jerusalem, a short walk leads you to the top of the Kastel, a Crusader fortress guarding on high the western approaches to Jerusalem. It's a site that every school kid in Israel knows. It's a site that recalls and retells and debates the central battles during Israel's 1948 Independence War in the hills around Jerusalem. Mere minutes from the Kastel fortress, the Sataf. Based on the natural springs throughout the Judean hills, a walk through the Sataf, the shades of fig and pomegranate trees, and a dip in the cool waters of the collection pools is a walk through history. From the Stone Age, through the First and Second Temple periods, through the Christian and Muslim Middle Ages, from the pre-state Palestinian Arab village of Sataf, and continuing up until today. But why? What created the cultural thirst in the years leading up to the creation of Israel, and that continues today? That people are so passionate, so obsessed about walking, about hiking, about knowing the land. Well, one could go back, as we do, to the Hebrew Bible. And according to Genesis 13, God instructs Abraham, a new immigrant, Oleh Chadash, in the land of Israel, arise and walk the land. Kum v'hitalech ba'aretz. And in fact, a popular Israeli song, if I'm not mistaken, written in the 1960s, even takes those three simple words, Kum v'hitalech ba'aretz, and reminds people, get up and walk the land. Take with yourself a backpack and a stick and head out. And it goes without saying that the people of Israel grew up on this land. One doesn't have to add detail to the fact that today there are many who will argue colonial settlers, invaders. It's just simply not true. And one has to have incredible ignorance not to recognize that the people of Israel grew up in the land of Israel. Hebrew inscriptions from hundreds of archaeological sites, some of them dating back 3,000 years, ruins of ancient fortresses, city gates, place names of hundreds of sites throughout the country bear witness to the Jewish roots of this place. A pottery shard found at Chirbat Ka'efa, an ancient city not far from the modern town of Beit Shemesh and Kibbutz Beit Guvrin, presents the oldest Hebrew text found until today, 10th century BCE. 1,000 years before the period that we typically relate to as the period of Hillel and Shammai and a young Jewish teacher from the Galilee in common culture known as Jesus. A text that mirrors some of the most powerful values of ancient Hebrew culture and echoes the messages of the prophets of Israel found at Khirbet Keifa. Now imagine you're walking across this sun-baked tell. It's full of dried grass and thorny reeds. With every step, you're literally following in the footsteps, retracing the steps of the ancient Hebrews who once called this hilltop home. Imagine finding this inscription as a hiker or volunteer excavator, and the piece scratched into, inscribed onto this broken piece of pottery: "You shall not do but worship God. Do justice with the slave and with the widow. Do justice with the orphan and the stranger. Plead for the infant. Plead for the poor, for the widow. Rehabilitate the poor at the hands of the king. Protect the poor and the slave. Support the stranger." Based on the archaeological excavations and the translations done by Professors Garfinkel and Galil. Wow, for a people returning from exile after 2,000 years, those inscriptions, that archaeology, the hiking was one of the many ways that an old new people renewed its relationship with its old new land. Hiking was part and parcel of a whole new academic and popular discipline that began to develop in this country that in English we could call Land of Israel Studies. But the English phrase, it doesn't capture the power, the romance of the Hebrew term. It's a field of learning that included everything from Bible to archaeology, history, geography, even botany and zoology. The Hebrew, Yediat Ha'Aretz, knowing the land, expresses a level of intimacy, direct contact between the learner and the land itself, between the returning people and the land of Israel. Yediah is the phrase used in the Bible for sexual relations. And so Yediat Ha'Aretz also contains hints at, yes, connection, intimacy, even control through mapping, hiking, research, study, teaching, and training. In some ways, the modern Israeli passion for hiking was a kind of secular pilgrimage. And in the same way that pilgrimage includes sacred texts, new texts became central to pilgrimage in these high places. Now, any of us who've been to Masada, it would be hard to imagine that visit without a tour guide or your tour leader reading the final words attributed by the Jewish historian Josephus to the rebel leader Yair Belazar. Looking out from the mountain onto the deserted Roman camps below, Ben Yair's words, "Live free or die," continue to echo, and to raise questions about freedom, sacrifice, how we define heroism today, continue to be relevant. Standing from the hills above Jerusalem, looking down onto the Jerusalem-Tel Aviv highway, the paths of the pre-state defense convoys are brought to life when Chaim Guri's iconic words are recited. Bab el Wad, remember our names for all time. Where convoys to the city broke through, our dead lie sprawled by the roadside. The iron skeleton, like my fallen comrades, are mute. Israel's increasing consumerization has meant that many Israelis, let's be honest, prefer the air conditioning of a local shopping mall to a summer hike on a Galilee trail. For young Israelis recently released from army service, the adventure of South America or the beaches of Goa, they're a bigger draw than the Golan Heights or the Ramon Crater. To some extent, the mania for hiking maybe has also become more and more a central part of those Israeli circles connected to the Jewish communities, the settlements in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, and their political, ideological supporters. And even Israeli Arabs, Israeli Palestinians, are developing their own versions of Yediat Ha'Aretz, focusing on Arab, Muslim, and Christian sites, as well as the sites and places connected with their experiences and memories of 1948. But with all that said, hiking and Yediat Ha'Aretz is still wildly popular among wide swaths of the Israeli public. Even today, it's not unusual for the Israeli news to close with a story about a hiker a building contractor or an elementary school class that comes across a cache of Second Temple coins, or a mikveh from the days of the Talmud, a ritual bath, or a pottery shard with a Hebrew inscription. A country facing a complicated present and worried about its future, well, the hikes not only stretch our legs in a small place with large problems, but they also help us to look back on where we have been as we think about where we might be going. I'll finish it with just one thought, which is not connected with our story. But again, I just find it so important sometimes to link the Jewish story with the larger human experience. And I was reminded of another indigenous people in a very, very different part of the world, but a people whose connection with their land goes back thousands of years, a people who also experienced the pain of oppression, and in some ways seems to echo our own passion for connection to the land. There's a book that I love. It's by the author Keith Basso. He's an anthropologist. The book is called Wisdom Speaks in Places, and it's about the Apache peoples of the American Southwest and their connection with place. And in that book, a Apache guide and teacher, Dudley Patterson, talks about connection with place. And for me, as a Jew, as an Israeli, as a guide, so-called tour educator, the piece really hit me when I first read it, so I'll share it with us as well. Wisdom sits in places. It's like water that never dries up. You need to drink the water to stay alive, don't you? Well, you also need to drink from places. You must remember everything about them. You must learn their names. You must remember what happened at them long ago. You must think about it and keep thinking about it. Then your mind will be smoother and smoother. You'll see danger before it happens. You'll be blessed to walk a long way and live a long time. And so whether it's in Apache culture, far away from us, in a different place, in a different time, or whether it's our own story about in every generation, a person must see themselves as if they came out of Egypt. The idea that place, knowing place, telling our stories is essential to who we are every time a group comes to Israel and we walk the land together. Hopefully we can live up to the example set by Dudley Patterson in that different time, in that different people, in that different place.
Scott, Dudley Patterson, what you just said now is really imprinted in my brain. You need to drink from places. What I love most on a conceptual level about hiking, specifically in Israel, is that in essence, the entire country is your classroom. My knowledge of Judaism and my experience growing up in England was everything that I discovered about Judaism was in the confines and in the context of a physical classroom. And making Aliyah and having children here, I see how hiking is a vehicle through which you can explore. It gives motion and you create this connection with the land while also fostering and nurturing knowledge. It's become so ingrained within Israeli culture that, you know, when I think about election days that unfortunately are not too uncommon in this country, or Israeli Independence Day, hiking's the activity to do. Yes, we'll bring out our mangala barbecue, and yes, Israelis can be seen with their 5-course meals in the picnic area. But hiking, it's so much more, like you said, it's so much more than just an exercise. It's a vital component of a healthy mindset, especially for our youth. You know, the youth movements, my children were all involved in the Israeli Scouts, the Sofim. And now I have also a daughter in the army. And hiking is really a tool for education and bonding from a very, very young age, instilling in them critical values of teamwork, perseverance, love for the land. You know, when you think back and you talk to young Israelis where their deepest connections were formed, were on the trail. The most cherished memories were shared experiences of overcoming challenges, all while witnessing the beauty of their country. And when I think about my children in particular, it encourages them to take risks, to become comfortable with the outdoors. Now, coming from England and the various elements, I can't necessarily say that I was so comfortable with the outdoors, But that's the beautiful thing, is that within Israel, hiking is a means to develop a deep intrinsic connection to the physical land that becomes part and parcel of who you are. And our small size, actually, it allows us, because it's such a small country, it allows the young people of today to feel the entirety, yam liyam, from sea to sea. It allows them to feel the entirety of their homeland is within their reach. And that's a pretty strong and empowering feeling, that you can have that sense of ownership and familiarity within your grasp, with a membership to the national parks. 2 years ago, my husband and I decided that when we were to buy our national park subscription, that we were going to aim for an entire year, we were going to go from national park to national park. Now, baby steps, I think we went to about 2. But, these are life goals. And as vital lessons, especially, we want to always, in 2024, anywhere you are, we want to minimize, in terms of our health, the technology. We're bombarded by noise and digital interactions and screens. Hiking is a way to ground individuals. It's an opportunity for mindfulness and to really anchor you in the natural beauty and physical challenges of the land. And when I think back to our family hikes, it's funny talking about election day. You mentioned Sataf, Scott. So my family and I, one election day, because who can recall which one in particular, we were in Sataf, and what should have been a 2-hour hike ended up being a 7-hour hike because we had some differences of opinion, let's say, as to which route to take, and it ended up being quite the long day. But my oldest daughter, who actually ended up working after high school for Sofim, for the Israeli Scouts in Rehovot, she walked around, I remember, picking up garbage everywhere she went. And this mantra of leave no trace is deeply also ingrained. This environmental piece is deeply ingrained in the hiking culture. Because essentially, when we talk about generations to come, you want to ensure that the trails and landscapes remain pristine, this legacy. And, when I think again about the Israeli Scouts summer getaway, a few years ago, I recall visiting my daughter. She was at her camp. It was near Safat. And what I saw there was just mind-blowing. We talk about in the army, we see 18, 19-year-olds in very senior positions, which is really quite interesting when you think about how the fact that the prefrontal cortex is not usually fully developed until age 25. And yet we see these 18, 19-year-olds making pretty big decisions. So when I arrived at that campsite, I was blown away by the sheer scale and complexity of what these children had built. It wasn't some kind of manicured glamping experience. It was a testament to creativity, hard work, and resourcefulness. I will add, thankfully, that there were engineers on the site who just, sign off on everything. But each scout troop had its own area. It was like they'd built entrance gates, outdoor kitchens, storage halls, dining halls, and even synagogues. These structures were not just thrown together. They were designed and constructed by the kids themselves. Remember my daughter after dinner going out. What are you doing? I'm working on building the campsite, as you do when you're 16. And, just it's awe-inspiring because, again, coming as I do from England, where I could say that hiking wasn't necessarily in my blood, it is truly amazing. This level of independence and character building, I would say that's something that's quite unique to the Israeli experience because it can shape youth into resilient, capable individuals who are deeply connected to their land and their community. Now, it's interesting because we've been talking about this mindset in the context of how hiking is like a cultural linchpin. But, in terms of what can we take away from this for anybody, right? Not just those of us who are in Israel. What can we take away from it? Well, the first thing is that it all starts internally, embracing the mindset. It's more than just a physical activity that's taking you from one end of Israel to the other. It's about connecting with nature, taking risks, and wherever you are, experiencing the land's beauty and history. it's an opportunity for self-exploration and personal growth, not even just a recreational activity. And, not everybody, wherever you are in the world, has access to all the hikes, or maybe, it's not a activity that you fully developed, but you can begin by exploring local trails and parks. Even short walks in nearby natural areas can be surprisingly invigorating and inspiring, especially if you turn off your phone and just allow yourself to be in the moment. And I must say that one challenge that I have taken upon myself, which is proving to be a very difficult challenge, is to walk my dog every single morning without having a podcast on. I'm challenging myself to just be mindful. And I think that gradually, as you increase that scope of just being in touch with where your surroundings are, wherever that is really something that is potentially a catalyst for growth. And it's not something that just has to be appreciated alone. Hiking is a wonderful family activity that bridges generations. And, wherever you are in the world, regular hiking trips is an opportunity for family members to share, to connect their own story, their own land. You can connect with your family, and you can also use hiking as a way of connecting with your larger community. You can find local hiking clubs or groups. They can provide a great sense of friendship, motivation, an opportunity to discover new trails. And it's really just a welcome Pesach Zman. We have a chocolate bar in Israel. You're taking like a piece of time away. You're creating a break from the hustle and bustle of daily life with a chance to reflect, disconnect, and enjoy the peace and solitude of nature. And finally, you can bring a piece of Israel home with you. You can take inspiration from your hikes in Israel by bringing a piece of it home, whether it's through photos, journals, or even small souvenirs, like a stone or a leaf. These mementos can serve as a reminder of the experiences and lessons you've learned on the trail. And I think that by embracing the Israeli passion for hiking and making it a part of your life wherever you are, it's an opportunity for all of us to find a pathway, self-exploration and personal growth. So yes, we have the wonderful physical benefits. Yes, get in your 10,000 steps a day. But there are so many emotional and spiritual rewards that really provide such a holistic approach to well-being that it really just transcends any geographical boundaries.
And now, something for the road. A tip, a recommendation to help you make every journey your own.
We're here today with Hilary Menkowitz, J-Square's expert educator. Hilary lives in Jerusalem, and we are so pleased to have you here with us today. Hi, Hilary.
Hi. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we would love to hear your Something for the Road.
I do live in Jerusalem. In a couple months, it will be 16 years.
Wow.
But prior to that, I grew up in the suburbs outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. And then I made my way here when I made Aliyah. And I've been guiding now for, minus a couple of COVID years, about 13 years.
Amazing. All right, Hilary, tell us what your Something for the Road is.
So my tip is when you're here and visiting, specifically in Jerusalem, there is so much to see and so much that is steeped in history and religion and culture. But one of my favorite things as someone who lives here is the way the city is really sort of surrounded or hugged in by nature. And so my tip that I'm bringing you here is for when people are here to not forget to take a little time and go and explore a little of that Jerusalem nature. And one really great way to do it is to visit, and it's really a neighborhood, although it began as a village and sort of got encompassed and incorporated into Jerusalem. The village of Ein Karam is a beautiful, charming village to go and explore, great restaurants, art galleries, also a lot of churches because of the significance of the site in the Christian tradition. But it's surrounded by nature. I mean, there are great hikes in the area. And the one I want to sort of bring to you today is a really short and doable one that is only it's a 3-kilometer loop that starts right in the heart of the village, which is Mary's Well. It's the site of the original spring. And you keep the spring on your right and skirt up the winding streets up to eventually the streets kind of end, and there is a trail. You keep climbing up the hill, and eventually you get to just below where they are completing, finally, the light rail that connects the rest of the city to Hadassah Hospital above. And more or less you hang a left. It's a very easy hike. There are trail signs, but you don't even really need the trail signs. By the time you get up to the top there, you have to turn yourself around 180 degrees and take in the most amazing vista of the village down below, the mountains across from you on the other side of the valley, and you make your way across. That first ascent, it's not too difficult. It gets your heart pumping. You feel like you did something, active for the day, but it's not too difficult really for anyone. You can take your time. It's only a 3-kilometer loop, so the whole thing you could easily do probably within an hour or a little more. Sort of if you're having that itch of getting out in nature and you're here in Jerusalem, you maybe don't have a private car. Most hiking involves at least one car, sometimes even two, if it's not a circular route. It's a way to get out into nature without having to go so far out of the city. Really, you're still officially within the city. And then, once you cross over the ridge and snake your way down, there's some sort of switchbacks on the way down to the main drag that cuts through Ein Karam. You can circle back, and if you're an ice cream lover, you can hit up Golda's. If you need a beer after your hike, you can go to the Pundak and sit and get some beer. But it's that whole scene with all of the alfresco dining is quite a nice way to wrap up your time in Ein Karam.
Nice, my kind of hike. Thank you so much, Hilary.
My pleasure.
Until next time. Thanks for listening. Dive deeper into the world of travel on our J Squared Adventures website. That's j2adventures.com. And stay in the loop with our latest adventures on all our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all under J2 Adventures. And if you enjoyed hanging out with us, don't forget to leave us a comment, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, travel safely and keep wondering. I'm Sorrel.
I'm Scott.
See you soon with the Wandering Jews.